Welcome back, everyone, to the Sugarcane Podcast. I am Rudy.
Hey, I'm Sheldon, the founder and CEO of Sugarcane.
And we're here to give you some more tasty tidbits. What are we talking about today, Sheldon?
Yeah, I think we're talking about some history lessons, actually. So diving into history of Bitcoin, history of Ethereum, talking about kind of how they're different and why they matter. So I think that's the kind of general take what we're up to.
History class. One of my, not favorites, but I don't think I really appreciated it until I got older.
100%. I think it's one of those subjects that you don't really like until you realize that when you're an adult, you have to actually know something about what happened in the past.
Yeah. I'm like, what's going on? Like I live in Boston area, so
yeah.
Lexington, Massachusetts is nearby, and that's like where the start of like the war happened, like the first shot around the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's like right here. This is what the books have been teaching me about, and I didn't even like recognize that until someone told me while I was living here.
It's okay. You can say you're a complete delinquent in school.
I wasn't a complete delinquent, but I was pretty much a delinquent. Yeah, I was definitely spending more time on video games than I was on 100%. History lessons.
100%.
But good thing we're here today because we're going to give everyone else a good history lesson that I think is actually really important to understand, Bitcoin and Ethereum, why they exist, and keep up with the drama that goes on between them. So I think we all know Bitcoin's history pretty well. There's a anonymous figure or group of people we don't know, but they're labeled as Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yep.
And this person, during 2009, especially during that financial crisis, the housing crisis, the timing couldn't have been better for something like this to be released. And I definitely want to know, Sheldon, when was your first time ever like hearing about Bitcoin?
That's funny. So I went to the school at MIT, and in my sophomore junior year, around 2013, 2014, they were giving out free Bitcoin to every student, right? And it's kind of funny. Even at that time, price was pretty low, but I kind of thought nothing of it, to be honest. And maybe if I had bought into it, then at that point, my life would have been different. I wouldn't be on this podcast. No, I'm kidding.
Different conversation on the podcast.
Yeah. That's when I first heard about it. But specifically getting actually like involved and interested, I started building a lot of stuff in, I want to say 17, I want to say 2016, 2017. I started building a lot of stuff, specifically in Ethereum, just because I was like really cool about how you can actually program money and program value. That's how I got into the space. What you?
Yeah, it was with friends. I think we were just hanging out in my parents' basement, playing video games, talking about new tech, and someone's just bringing up, oh, there's this Bitcoin that's a digital currency and you can buy stuff online with it. And naturally, my nerdy self is intrigued. So I'm like, free money? I don't have a job, so how do I make this work?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I remember like, for anyone that knows or remembers a faucet where you can just like go on a website that gives you free Bitcoin slowly, just because they were trying to incentivize people to use it.
I think you should actually talk about what is that? What is a faucet?
So a faucet would be a web page where you would type in your Bitcoin address and you would receive a fraction of a Bitcoin or a sat. And the intended purpose was, I think, two things. One, the person who owned the web page would just receive money for showing lots of advertisements because lots of people were trying to get free Bitcoin. And at that time when faucets existed, it was, less, a couple bucks a Bitcoin, maybe even less. And it was just a way to get Bitcoin circulating in the ecosystem. Otherwise, if people were holding it all for themselves in that time, it wouldn't spread, and you need people to use it to make it valuable.
Yeah, pretty much. It's definitely a great way to distribute, like, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin, and spread out cryptocurrency, because like current on ramps are pretty hard. So great to have people getting it freely at least, so they can actually try out the systems.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and like I guess, and for history lessons, like, how do you view the first or the intended purpose of Bitcoin when it first came out?
Yeah, it was interesting because like back in 2009 when it first came out, like early 2009, it was right after the kind of financial crisis, and at the time it was like peak like hatred of like the existing financial system, and so people really thought about Bitcoin as a fight against that, right? So really like completely anarchist in the way of like enabling people to have non-state or controlled money and be able to actually have access to something that like no central entity can like mess with or screw around and like change like, hey, I can take your money from you. And so that's really where it started. And I think since then, it's really got evolved into like this fully a concept of digital gold. I think that's really been a narrative that's been like expanded upon and really captured people's imagination.
And to add on to that, like people wanted a safe haven for their money, and this is what
Hmm.
Bitcoin advertised. Like you said, decentralized. You own your money. No one can take that from you, and it's self sovereignty. Like that's the goal.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
as Bitcoin developed, more projects were forking Bitcoin, meaning they were just using Bitcoin source code, editing it to what they see fit to make it seem better.
Hmm.
Bitcoin had that first mover advantage. It was a big push, but it doesn't stop new contenders from coming. Even the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik, he was a big Bitcoin fan. He was a proponent. He loves or loves Bitcoin. Or I think he still loves Bitcoin today. He's pretty agnostic
Hmm.
in terms of crypto. He's definitely an idealist, and that's kind of where Ethereum came from. Was the idea of what a digital currency can do. And I'd love to learn your thoughts too, Sheldon, about that transition of what Bitcoin was providing and what
Hmm.
the vision was and what Ethereum can do.
Yeah. So also kind of a bit of a history lesson. Back in like in 2009, into like 2000, I think it's like 13, Vitalik was like a big, created a lot of blogs and articles about Bitcoin because he's really excited about how like this new financial movement, you can actually construct digital value and have people transact that without having any central entity. And there's also a big project at the time called colored coins. And so kind of get a bit complex, but like colored coins enabled you to actually be able to create customized functions on chain. So like in the same way that I can move like 5 Bitcoin from me to you, I can also maybe create a separate piece of code, again, a smart contract or some type of entity that can do something. And then you can interact with it. I can interact with it. No central entity can control that piece of code. And so colored coins came out of like that emergence of like trying to do more with this kind of decentralized network. And kind of if you take it a couple steps further, instead of having it be very specialized that colored coins can only do one thing, Vitalik thought about how can I actually create a full, like what's called a virtual machine, or like almost like a computer in the cloud or in like a decentralized network so that it can do anything imagination that people can come up with. Um, and so that was kind of the big start of where Ethereum got its kind of breath from like Bitcoin can only do one, Bitcoin can only do like value, and color coins like it can do something but not anything. And then Ethereum, the idea is that it can do anything, and that Ethereum came out, I think it was like in mid 2015. So that's kind of where it started,
Yeah.
got to start.
I don't think I even knew about a colored coin.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew about that. I'm surprised I
Yeah.
didn't know either. I'm like, really? I thought I knew them all back then because there was only a handful, but
Yeah. Yeah,
left
it's
in
just
the
kind of
dust.
like a OG lessons.
I know.
Yeah, color coins. Yeah, they came out. I think it was like in 20, must have been like 2012, 2013, when those kind of started coming out because they started to be able to do more with the premise of using Bitcoin as like the basis. But then if you
Mhm.
move past colored coins, you can actually do fully like expressive code in a centralized way.
And that's also a thing to remember too is the more you do, there's also more transactions happening on a system. So Bitcoin's transactions versus Ethereum transactions. Can you give us a quick synopsis on the difference?
Yeah, so Bitcoin, even though it has this idea of being a wealth storage system, like you can actually store money, store value, the actual time it takes is pretty slow, right? It takes about like 10 to 20 minutes to come to consensus or come to agreement about the state of the world. So like if I sent you, let's say 5 Bitcoin again, it'll take about 10 minutes for that transaction to actually be verified. And in the real world, you just can't wait that 10, 20 minutes for something to be actually finalized. But in the Ethereum context, I think it's like 12-second blocks. So like
Mhm.
it's much faster in terms of like almost an order of magnitude in how fast transactions can be completed or proved as true. But again, that's in the case of like Visa, transactions are on like the millisecond level. So definitely a lot of ways to go. And there's a lot of scaling solutions to get to that. But Bitcoin is 10 minutes, 10, 20 minutes. Ethereum is around like 12 seconds. Visa at the top end is like milliseconds. So,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of give you context to where things are at.
And that's the thing too, is like you are, the idea is to supply the world with the transaction of this money. There's
Yeah.
tens of thousands of transactions happening every second, and
Yeah.
Visa can handle that. That's why they're a great system. Credit card is great. And
Yeah.
then this is where crypto falls. Like it is not easy to handle mass transactions,
Yeah.
especially for just money and Bitcoin's sake. But with Ethereum, it's money and nowadays NFTs, smart
Mm-hmm.
contracts, interactions with dApps. Those all involve transactions and also all cost time. It's not cheap and it's yeah, because it takes a lot of time to do.
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, both systems are working on scalable solutions. Bitcoin's
Yeah.
working on their Lightning, Ethereum's working on layer twos, and
Yeah.
a lot more scaling solutions with that. The future is like coming soon. And that's also the beautiful part about this system is how you're able to grow. You're able to build on top of this code. That people can work on new improvements and come to a consensus and agreement to say, hey, this sounds like a good update. Let's all push for it and
Yeah.
require all these miners or nodes to approve the update worldwide, globally.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big shift too within the ecosystem of Bitcoin and Ethereum. The proof of work to proof of stake. Bitcoin's still on proof of work. Ethereum was on proof of work for a long time from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning until a year or two ago when they moved to proof of stake.
Yep.
I want a quick overview on kind of like why that's such an important transition for Ethereum and why they kind of went through it and why is Bitcoin still on it.
So I think defining POW versus POS. So POW is proof of work. POS is proof of stake. And so proof of work, which is kind of a way in which blockchain networks can come to an agreement about kind of the state of the world. So if you remember from the last episode where I was talking about like if you have a ledger, like a kind of state of transactions, and I transfer money to you, that ledger or that state of transactions gets updated to a new state of transactions. That agreement process of like what that new world is kind of what proof of work is meant for. And so the idea is that these computers can run these essentially an algorithm, and it takes a certain amount of cycles for this algorithm to be completed. And then once they get to the end of the cycles, they come up with a hash or come up with like a number, and that number is then used to create the new state of the world. Right. So again, fairly technical, probably complicated, but the idea is that in the proof of work context, computers are running computations to basically get to the new state of the world. But the
Yeah.
difference is that in proof of stake, now you have, instead of having everyone running all these computations competing with each other, you now have people who are putting collateral, who are putting money up, basically say, hey, I want to be the one to prove the next block or be the person that says what's the next state of the world. And based on how much collateral you put up, that's your percentage of the pie of the number of blocks or number of new states of the world you get to create. And so, any questions there before I move on to like why that matters?
Um, no questions, but for anyone who's wanting a deeper understanding, don't worry. Next episode is going to be all about the miners and nodes and get a nice deep dive in what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep it high level for this one.
Yeah. So the reason I bring that up is because proof of work is very energy intensive, right? Everyone around the world who are running Bitcoin nodes or Ethereum nodes, this is last year, they had to all be running computation, burning energy, right? So what happened in around like end of last year, so around I think it was like October. I was actually at a watch party watching like the transition happen. Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake, and so in proof of stake context, it's now a lot more energy efficient. You don't actually have to have everyone running computation because now instead of everyone competing on the computation side, you now basically have to put up money, put up collateral, and be the one to actually have your share of the pie of be the person who creates the next block. And so I think I kind of forgot where I was going with this. Was that the question?
Well, no, it's,
Man, riffing on history.
well, that's what you're saying is it's
Yeah.
like accurate. And the idea behind that too is it's kind of scary to hear, oh, I have to put money up to participate in Ethereum's proof of stake now.
Yeah.
But you don't have to put a lot. The requirement for a full node, a solo node, is 32 ETH. But there are plenty of options and protocols that are providing like a pool where you put 0.1 ETH or 0.00 ETH. One, not 000, but 001. And that way you can still participate in this pool of staking and collect rewards for helping out this network.
Yeah.
So anyone can participate. And it's also a little bit more friendly towards new people, because with proof of work, you have to buy a piece of electronic device, a miner. It's pretty much a computer that runs a certain algorithm over and over and over again. You have to leave that running in your house, which is, again, expensive, and kind of keep an eye out for it. If you're going to just participate in proof of stake, you can do that with many options like Rocket Pool or Stakewise. There's more coming out. And then if you want your solo staking, then you would have to, again, host a little computer at home. But thankfully, it's not as energy intensive. You kind of just have to leave it connected to the network. There's so much to go into those two, though. Don't like, that's just high level, people. We're gonna go deep into it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's also a lot of controversy between these two. If you've been keeping up at all, you're probably screaming at us right now, like, there's so much more to it. You can't just leave it off like that. Don't worry, we're not. But I think this kind of wraps up today's episode. It was a good one because it was history, some brief technicalities, and a good prep for next week.
Yep.
All right, guys. See ya.
All right. See you.